Where am I from? From my mom. Actually, I'm from a little reservation called Doki's Reserve. It's on the French River in Ontario. And it's about, I'd say it's about 200 miles north of Toronto. And it's right on Lake Nipissing. And the Lake Nipissing empties out onto the French River. French River is where the little bay where we lived in on the river. It's called Doki's Bay. It's not a very big reserve. It's just kind of a small reserve, but but I've walked through the whole thing. When I was a kid, I used to walk through the whole reserve. When I went hunting and stuff, I circled the whole thing, and I was pretty familiar with the whole reserve from the time I was in my teens. I used to hunt for the family because at that time when you got old enough and you got to provide for the family. You start to provide for the family. I used to set snares for rabbits. Okay, you set snare for rabbits. Went out fishing in the spring, did fishing, cut fish, clean it, put it into the food bin for my mom, and anything that we got, we try to help into the family. And so that's basically how we did. As I got older, I started hunting for larger animals like deer. And that's basically, I'd go out on my own for 2 or 3 days, just going out and hunting for deer. And so that's basically, I have to admit that I learned it from my dad. I used to follow my dad all the time. When he went hunting, I'd ask him if I could go with him. And he would take one of us boys with him every time he went hunting. He would take one of us, so that he would say, now you watch what I do, and I want you to pay close attention, so that when you get out and do hunting yourself, I want you to be able to do that, so you'll be able to know exactly what I'm doing. And so I'd sit and I'd watch him. I'd watch what he did and how he succeeded in hunting. And so that's basically how I learned to do, to get out there and hunt. And I was maybe 12, 13 years old, and I might have even been younger than that. But we used to, he'd give us a little pack that we'd carry our stuff, and that's our lunch that we'd have to take with us, and we'd go into the woods for a couple of days, and stay overnight in a lean-to or whatever it was that we had to stay in for the night. And so basically, that's how I learned from childhood to, and that's how I supplied our family. And then I could see as I got older, I could see that the family was starting to struggle for food with that many people in the family, with that many of us in the family. I figured, well, it'd be much easier for me to maybe if I wasn't in the family anymore, that would give my dad a much easier time. There'd be one less person to feed, and which was right. I mean, when you're 17 years old, you should be out on your own. You should be doing your own thing, and that's basically what I figured that I should be doing that. And most of the time during the summer is when we went out and guided on the river, and that's how I made my money during the summer. Was I would guide for tourist fishing, and that was I learned how to guide when I was about 12 years old. I used to go with my brothers, and they would be guiding on the river for tourists that came. And so I would go and I would learn from them where to go fishing, how to what areas to find the fish and stuff like that, which I had already done when I was just a little kid. I used to run along the shore and having a little pole, wooden pole, just fishing along the shores and catching fish, catching little bitty rock bass and stuff like sunfish, perch, and stuff like that. This was my entertainment. This is how I caught fish. I found out that when I caught these fish, I'd clean them. I'd fillet them and clean them and stuff like that. And there was some old people that lived on the reserve, and I'd put them in a bag and I'd give it to them. I'd say, here, Grandma or Granny or whatever, you guys can have this fish. And so in the summertime, what we would do is Granny would take us. She had this big old boat. The thing used to leak like crazy. It was a big old thing. I think it was about 18 feet long or something like that. And the thing used to leak like crazy. But she used to row that. We used to row it. All of us kids would get onto that boat. We'd row it down the river or up the river, wherever she wanted to go. We'd row up there, and half of us kids would take a coffee can. We'd bail out the boat as we were going because it was leaking so hard. And so half of us would be rowing the boat. The others would be bailing the boat, and so that we could get to where we were going. And by the time we got to where we were going, the boat was so full of water and stuff like that. They'd pull it up on the shore, you'd roll it over and let the water out, and then we'd camp there. And then my granny would set up a tent, and it was an old canvas tent that she had saved, and so we all helped her. She used to carry the poles with her that put up the tent, and so we pulled up in the shore, made a tent, and after we made the tent, she would tell us to go gather wood, and we'd run over and gather wood. This is just basically how we lived. We'd run out and get some wood so that she could build a fire and cook whatever, make a pot of tea and whatever we had for our lunch. And she would make some bannock, what they call bannock scone, which was just basically flour and baking powder. She would carry a bag of flour with her and some baking powder, and she would bake this bread, and she would make it, roll it up, and put it against the fire, and then she'd let it cook. And we couldn't wait until this thing was done because, us kids were hungry. And so most of the time we'd go up and we'd pick blueberries. We'd pick blueberries, and this is how my grandma, this is how she made money during the summer. All of us kids would go out and we'd all pick berries. We'd put them in baskets. She'd take them into the lodges, to the tourist lodges, and sell them. She'd sell them by the deal. And then after she was finished, then she would go and she'd buy us maybe some. There was a boat that came down the river, and it was like a tourist tour boat. And the tour boat, they used to sell ice cream. That was our treat. After we picked berries all day, this is what we had. She went in the boat and got us ice cream. She got us a little brick of ice cream. We cut it up and she would pass it out to us. And that was our treat. That was our treat. Then we'd head on back after we were finished. We'd head on back to the islands where our tent was. We'd stay there overnight. And in the evening, what she would do in the evening, she had this old line that she had got from. She used to save this store, the wrapping line, string that they used to use in stores in the early days. They used to put out when they used to buy meat and stuff like that. They'd put the thing there, and they'd put the what do you call it, meat on there, and they'd wrap it up, and they'd get the string and they'd wrap it up. Well, she saved that string. She saved it and tied it together, and that was her fishing line. That's what she used for her fishing line. And she wrapped it up. She wrapped it up on a pole and stuff like that. And in the evening, when we were finished, after we were all through, she'd say, okay, you kids go out and see if you can catch a little perch, a little fish about this size. And she'd say, okay, you guys go out there and see if you can catch this fish. And we'd get a bent what do you call it, wire. We used the bent wire, put some bread on it, throw it out there. We'd yank and we'd get these little perch. And she would take the perch, she would hook them on the side of the gill and put it out there on a stick, on a big stick. And there was a big hook on this thing. And all of a sudden you see this line go down. All of a sudden you see this pole go down. And she'd say, okay, now you wait a minute. Don't pull it yet. And a little while later, she'd say, okay, now what are you guys which one do you want to pull it? I mean, well, they'd say, we'd all of us kids want to. So there was like about maybe, 5 or 6 of us kids that were out there. And so one of us wanted to bring this fish in, because it was that perch attracted these pike that came around in the evening that were feeding on the real short grass. And so they would grab that perch. And so we'd haul them in. Here's this huge pike, northern pike. And then that's what we'd have for for a few days. She'd clean it up and put it in that was our food. That was the way that was how we were fed. And of course, she always carried potatoes and flour. That was the main her food. And so that's basically how we survived. When I left my home, I was 17 years old, and I didn't know where I was going. I just headed out, and it was scary. It was very. I didn't realize that at the time when I left. It's kind of. I was looking forward to it because it was kind of a new adventure, a brand new adventure for me. And I had no idea where I was going. 17 years old, no education, nothing for me to back up on. The only thing I had was this money that I had earned for that week that I guided. And it was like $60, $60 in my pocket. And that was it. I left, heading out to see the world. It wasn't until a few days later when I was driving on a bus that I realized that I was heading somewhere that I had no idea where I was going. All of a sudden, fear started coming in. And I realized, my goodness, what am I doing? What am I doing? Where am I going to end up? What am I going to do? But I had it in my mind that when I left, that I wasn't going to go back. This was an adventure that I was going to keep, and I was going to continue it. No matter what, no matter how lonely, no matter how much I felt inside of me, I had to go through it. And that's how excuse me. I get very emotional on some of these things. But anyway, that's what I had to do. I had to go out and I had to get out there. There was nobody to back me up, no one there to fall back on. I had to do it on my own. I had to be the one to decide on what I had to do with my life. My life was right there before me. And I had to go out, and that was it. It's very hard to explain to someone else what that was like. It's a life that you leave behind with all your family, all your friends, everybody that you knew all your life, that you were brought up with. And here you're just letting him go. You're letting him go. And you are starting a whole new career. Not even knowing where you were going. Not even knowing where this place was. The only thing I knew about the States was that it was across the border. It was in the United States. And I had no idea where that was. But I took a chance. I went on this adventure. And I was bound to make it, whatever happened. I had no education. The most education I had was a teacher came one time for the summer and she taught us how to write my name. Maybe how to count to 100 was it. I knew my ABCs and that was it. That was my education. That was the height of my education. I ended up in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio. They told me it was the fifth largest city in the United States. I had no idea where that was. When they said that they were going to Ohio, they were going to the States, and I said, okay, I'm going to the States, I'll go along. I had no idea where that was. The person that I guided for was a man. I guided for a fisherman, for the people that came on the river. And these people were the ones that came from the States. I had no idea where the States was. I had no idea where that they were talking about. But they were the last people I guided for in the fall. They said they were going back to the States. They were going to Toledo, Ohio. And I says, oh, it's Ohio. Hey, that's where I'm going to go. That's where I want to go, in Cleveland. And they says, I asked the guys, and I said, could I ride with you? And they said, oh, definitely, sure, you could come along. And I went along with them. I took that chance. I was going to, because the winter before that was so hard for us. There's 9 of us in our family, 9 kids in our family, plus my mom and dad. And it was hard for my mom and dad to supply that many kids in the family. And I figured, hey, if I leave, it'll be less burden for them so that they can survive. They could concentrate on the rest of the kids that were left at home, which I was more than happy to. Here I go again. I'm starting to get emotional here. But that's the way it was. And I left my family. And there's a lot to leave behind. There's a lot of your life that you're leaving behind you. And without education, I managed to pull it off. I got to the States, got a job at a place called Scott and Fetzer Company. They took me in and I started working. And the funny thing about education, the thing that I learned when I first got to the States, when I first got to Cleveland, I didn't even know where to catch a bus. I didn't even know how to dial a phone. I had no idea how to dial a phone. So when I got to Cleveland, they started showing me these different things. The different people that were there started showing me what I had to do. And I started working for the company, and they gave me, they put me in the receiving department. Receiving department where is all the everything that came into the company, and we had to categorize it and put it in different places. I started reading all these. I didn't know how to read. I knew the numbers and everything where everything went. That's how I learned. And they promoted me. Later on, they promoted me to the part where I had to pack them in. They said, okay, you're a very ambitious person. We'll put you upstairs where we're at the parcel post department, where you take things that are coming in from all over the United States. That was a big deal for me, because one of the things I started finding out is when the labels that I had to make out said what state they went to, where they went to, where they would end up, what city they were going to, and I started reading up on all these little labels and the labels and where they went to. I started realizing, okay, this goes to California, that goes to Washington State, that goes to. I start realizing there's a lot of whole different states, United States. You know, I started realizing there's a whole United States over here, that all these parts that we were sending out, they were going to. That was my teaching. That's where I started learning to write. They told me to write labels. Just copy whatever the labels were. I copied them. That's where I learned to do my writing. I learned to do my writing. I learned to do how many there was. I learned how many, what the amount of products they were sending to different places. I learned that from that. That was my learning project right there. Even though I had no education from that point, I started learning. I worked for that company for 8 years. And and then I made a mistake, which I thought I was able to do, which I thought I would able to do. This friend of mine had a service station. He says, "Oh, come on out," and he says, you could run a service station." And I thought, "Oh, sure, I could do that." And I tried, but I couldn't do it because of my education, because of my calculating and adding and subtracting and stuff like that in the sales end of it. I did really well, just pumping gas. I did really well. I was doing good for the company. I was making money all hand over fist for the money for the company, but not for myself. For myself, you had to make a certain amount by selling other products, and I wasn't good at that. And so that kind of I had to drop out of that, and I had to, because I was working too many hours trying to make up for what I was doing, and so I had dropped out of that, and I said I can't do that anymore. So all of my friends that I was hanging around with at the time, they said, "Oh, we're going to California because there's a lot of work there." And so we all decided, this little group that I was with, I belonged to a roller skating club. And so they all said, "Let's go to California." And so we all decided that, hey, that's where we're going to go. This friend of mine, his name was John McKay, and he was working for Northrop. And he says, "I got a job there." And he says, "If you guys come out," he says, "well, we'll kind of help each other." And so we headed to California, not knowing where I was going again. Here I am, heading out again and doing the same thing. But I did it. Meanwhile, at that time, I met up with my girlfriend, which I was doing dancing on and roller skating, and so we ended up getting married. Her name was B, and so her and I headed out for California with the rest of the group. And that's where we ended up, in California. That's the first part of the story. I had learned a little bit about printing in Cleveland. And so I thought maybe I should go into the printing business. When pictures, or the news guys came in with pictures, I had to develop them, put them in the processor, put them out, and get them ready to be printed out in the newsprints. And so that's basically what I had to learn. I had to learn all this technique, which was very good. But then I got a wild hair. I decided that I wanted to do a little more. And there was an ad we were printing newspapers, right? We were printing newspapers, and one of the newspapers had an ad for airlines. For airlines were looking for people to come and work for Continental Airlines. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'll try out for it. What the heck? It's a new venture for me. I went out, filled out the applications, And I'll be darned if they didn't hire me. They put me on. They said, yep, we need a person just like you. So this is the first time that I got into actually where I felt like I got myself a neat job. I went to work for them, and they said, okay, now that you're here, we're going to have to dress you up because you're going to be in public. You're going to start now serving the public. You're going to be on the airlines. You're going to be serving public, and we're going to have to get you a suit. The work was really nice. I liked the work. I liked the job and stuff, but you didn't get paid. There was the money that you were getting was just barely paying your rent, just paying your room where you were staying in LA. So I went back into printing. I went back into the news business. And one time I drove up to Seattle. I came up to Seattle to visit my in-laws, my sister-in-law. Her and her fiance at the time they're working at the University of Washington. So they said, come on up and we'll have a vacation. So I came up to Seattle, and we were kind of walking around, and we went down to the waterfront, and here are these boats coming in with these fantastic big old salmon. And I thought, oh, this is what I really like to do. And so I went to the print shop, to the, what do you call it, newspaper here. I asked them, I said, are they hiring here? And they said, when can you start? I said, well, I'd have to go down to LA and get my stuff. He said, go down and get it. Come on up here. And that's how I ended up in Seattle. And I worked for them for quite a few years, just working as their cameraman. And that's mainly where most of my working came from, is working as a cameraman, not a cameraman. Yeah, actually, if you're familiar with the printing business, when pictures come in from the outside, they have to be rephotographed, what they call halftone. They have to halftone them so that they could put them in the press. And I had taken up archery. I took a bale of hay, stuck it in our carport, and start shooting. And I shot every day. I'd come home from work. I'd stand there and shoot for hours at a time. It was a California archery tournament. And I'll be darned if I didn't come in first. And they asked if I could go down and demonstrate the archery and things like that. I went down there and I started shooting and stuff. And a lot of these people from Hollywood came down and were shooting, and they wanted me to show them how to shoot. Roy Rogers at the time, he was still alive. He came out and he was asking me if I could show him how to shoot. And this guy, his name is Barry Corbin, came over and he says, "Oh, I'm part Cherokee. I could shoot a bow too." He said, "I could show you." When I came up to Seattle, we were working on a project of Native American culture. And I was working down at Daybreak Star. And there's little trails that came by there. And who comes walking down the trail is Barry Corbin. He comes by, he says, "Oh, Richard, what are you doing here?" I said, "We're doing this project here." I said, "Oh, it's a culture for the Native people." And he says, "I'm working on a job here too." He says, "I'm working on a project. It's called Northern Exposure." He said, "Why don't you come on down? I want to introduce you to the directors." He says, "Maybe you can help us along with this." I said, "Sure, why not?" One day when I was down at Daybreak Star, and Bill Black said, not Bill Black, Bernie Whitebear said, "Why don't you come in and entertain the elders?" So that's basically where I was then started learning about the different the different culture in this area, how the totem pole was carved, who carved it, why they carved it, what it was used for, and why they used it, and what it was, what chieftains, and how each tribe had their own totem, each mask that was made. I got involved and started making masks, carving masks for them. Then they asked me to go to the art center downtown, the Seattle Arts Center. They asked me if I could go down there and be a live carver, a live presentation stuff. So I took my equipment down there and I sat there and I did carving. People came in and we were looking at my carving. I had done a play down at the Children's Theater about this fantastic story about how the white people came along and took the children from the reservations and put them into a school so that they could forget their culture. My mom, she was one of them. She was taken from that. She was taken from that, from her house, from her home, and put into this. And she was forbidden to speak her language, not to teach any of the kids the language of our culture or our people. But most of that was put underground. Most of that was put underground. And so that our people kept the culture. That play I did down at the Children's Theater basically did the same program that we had done, that what they had done to my mom. She was afraid. She was afraid to speak the language. And they opened up our culture and they said, okay, it's okay for you guys to do your powwow again, to do whatever you wanted to do. And my brother and I and this friend who was from Germany came over and helped us clear out a big spot to have our first powwow. And I bet the young man from Germany didn't even know that this was one of the first things that was our culture being brought back. And my mom, she couldn't walk around powwow grounds at that time. We had to push her on a wheelchair. And she stood there and she cried and she says, I never thought I'd see the day that I'd be able to do this again. And that was the happiest day of our life, when we could go back and start doing the powwows again. And today, this summer, 2 years ago, I went back and did the powwow again. Now it's welcomed like it has always been. And when I went to when I did this play down at the Children's Theater down in Seattle, it was all about this. It was called The Rememberer. And the remember was basically how the elders would pick out one of the children, and teach them and say, okay, this is what you're going to have to learn, and this is what you're going to have to carry on. At that time, I never realized I was one of these people that was told, this is what you're going to have to learn. This is what you're going to have to pass on to the next generation. And when the elders picked me, I know they did. They picked me to do this. And I feel the greatest honor for our culture and for our people. And I'd like to pass this on to the children that are trying to make heads or tails of this whole thing. That if you stay with it, if you believe in your culture, you believe in your own path, eventually you will reach it. Don't give up. You keep trying, you keep trying. There are times when you're so lonely and so sad and so tears you up with everything that comes into life. But you have to keep going. This is the teachings. These are the things that you're going to learn. These are the things that you're going to have to pass on to the next generation. These are the things that you will learn. And you will have to teach. We're set upon this earth. The elders are there and tell you what you should do. But you have to pay attention. That's the main thing. Just paying attention to what's around you and realizing the power that's within yourself and the power that's within the people around you that can help you in advancing your life, and knowing that during this period that I was learning all of these things, you kind of wonder about this. Because I go to powwows and stuff, and I'm sitting all by myself up in a balcony or up somewhere, and I'm sitting up there. Someone walk up to me and bring me tobacco and say, could you tell me, how did they know? How did they know that you are the one that's the teacher? It's believing. It's believing that you can do it. And believing that you can carry on this belief for others. Not for yourself. It's not for you. It's for the others. It's for the people that's around you. To teach them that there's others out there. There's other things out there other than yourself. Most of the things that I have here are ceremonial. These are my ceremonial garb. And that's what I wear when I go to ceremonies. These are sage, grass, headband. My headband. This is my headband that I wear when I get real mean. And then I have here the sacred buffalo that we honor, and sage grass. This is sweet grass. This is sweet grass that we use for ceremonial purposes. A pipe with a tomahawk, and then I have a turtle rattle. I use this for carrying my tobacco. This is my fan. I used to use an eagle fan, but I somehow didn't feel that I was worthy enough to carry an eagle fan. So I had to eliminate that. These moccasins were made by my aunt. Last time when I went to a powwow up in Canada, that's where I got these from. These are from my aunt. She made them, and she said, wear them with dignity. Most of the stuff here is for ceremonial purposes, and I use them when people ask me to come out and do the ceremony for them, and that's where I get my material from. And if you'll notice that the eagle, you will find that there's a whole lot of, in my area, there's a lot of eagle. And my mom, her name was Lorena Dokis. And the Dokis family was the Magise family, which represent the eagle. And that's where all of these eagles come from. When you see all these eagles, I represent my mom. That's her. When I see these are the ones that's protecting me. And she's always there. That's the eagle. And they call him Magise. Migise. Midaskogema ejiot. Magise. I was out to visit my brother this summer. I think he created the greatest hurt I ever had. See, my brother, he drinks a lot. It's not that I condone what he does, but the things that he says when he does drink, the hurt that he puts into it. I don't think he realizes how deep it cuts into your soul when he talks about things like this. He was telling me, he says, you're not even a native anymore. You're not even an Indian anymore. To be an Indian, you have to live out in the woods. You have to live by yourself. You have to know what life is all about. I don't think you can just drop your culture. That's my own feeling. I don't feel that you can just drop your culture and say, I'm not native anymore. I think my culture is very important to me, and I think that everything that I do is based on where my culture has brought me, and this is what I am now, and that I don't think I'll ever lose that, and that's why I went back every 4 months to learn a little more about my culture. Every 4 months to learn about what it meant to be native, to be an Anishinaabe. And so that's where I learned a lot of that. There's a lot more that I don't understand. I don't understand it because I'm not with them right now. And if I went back and talked to the elders, I probably would learn a lot more. It's about our culture and about our medicines, the medicines that you learn, that you use, what you can use and what you can't, and what they learned and what they know about all the different medicines, the herbs and everything that they use before white man ever settled on this continent. But during that period, I had gone back every so often to study my culture, because I had to learn 4 seasons. I had to learn the different seasons of our culture. I had to be there for every season in order for me to work up as an elder, to work my knowledge, to gain the knowledge of my people. I still know the language. Yishkitoyan genin, Ishnabemoyan, Nungum, Ejekidian. I learned the language I could still speak. That's what I'm saying right now. Nisanungum genin ma, Ejekidian. Kinagego, Ejekidian. Everything that I'm saying. And I try to keep my language. It's a very strange thing, but from the time that I was a child, my mom and dad spoke the language. From the time I was a child, I could speak the language. That's all we spoke in our family. Until I started getting older, then I started speaking English. But before that, that's all I spoke was my native tongue. And I still have that ability. There's few things that I don't quite grasp in the language, but I still understand it very clearly. I understand very well. Some of the words have drifted off. I cannot speak. I can't remember some of the words of it. This is what I'm saying now. Now I understand. I could speak. I could speak the language now again. Nishnabewek Kewin Wawede Midashko non dogoyan. If they can listen to what I say, they too can learn the language. That's what I'm saying now. Tinny is the one that's a heavy drinker. Okay? He's a heavy drinker, and he spends most of his time in the woods today. And he sits out there all day and drinks. And just because he sits out there and he says, I live in the woods now, and he says, because I live out there and I know what it's like to live out in the woods. I know how it is, and I can live off the land, and I know how it is to do that. And so that's basically where it comes from. This is basically where he's coming from. And he doesn't know what Marty and I have been through. We went through ceremonies. We've gone through all the ceremonies. We've done the ceremonies. But he's never gone through that. I don't think he has. I'm not going to say he hasn't. I don't know. I don't know what Tinny knows. That's my youngest brother, okay? He's my youngest brother. And he's heavily alcoholic, and I hate to say that, but that's basically where all that stuff is coming from. I started working with Marty. Marty and I started working together, and we started. I wanted to know a little more about the what they call the Medewan ceremonies. Each season of the year, there's four seasons that you go to. Okay, you have to go to all 4 of them in order to work your way up. The culture. There's like it's like a step ladder. Okay, if you're in the first rung, you're just learning. Second rung, you are now working up, and it works all the way up to the 10th or whatever it is that you go. And so this basically tells you all about the culture and all about what you have to know in order for you to get up to the next level. And in order for you to get to the next level, you have to go through all of the elders, and they have to tell you if you're qualified to be that person. If you now have learned enough about the culture and about the Medewan ceremonies, if you learned enough about it, then they will graduate you up to the next level. Anyone can join. Anyone can participate in it, but you have to know how to approach the elders. You have to find yourself a sponsor, and that sponsor will give you the guidance of what you have to do before you can even enter into the lodge of where you're going. And so there's people that are interested and want to do it, but they have to be sincere about it. They have to be sincere. The sincerity is the whole thing in our culture. If you just do it just for your own, just for a trip or just for a fun thing to do, it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. It's this loyalty, and it's this very, very strict way that you have to do it. That's like going like when I go out fasting. When I go out fasting, so I go to Bear Butte and I fast for 4 days. That 4-day fast is all. Most tribes do it. And I think I told you about that, where you go and you fast for 4 days, 5 days. A lot of them do it for 5 days. And you just go up there and you don't eat, you don't do nothing. You just sit in this circle that they make for you. And you stay there until that 5th day. And that basically the reason for that is for you to meditate and search into yourself and find out what it is that you would like to know, what it is that you would like to search for, what it is that you want to know, and what it is, how much of this can you absorb. If you ask me what level I was in the teachings, I would say maybe half, maybe 1. If anything, that's my teachings. That's as much as I know. And there's all the way up to 10. So, just from what you hear from me is basically that's all I know. And so when you talk to an elder and you start asking him questions and you start giving him tobacco and you want more understanding of it, that's what it's going to take. And that's what it's going to take. And like I said, I don't even know if I can make a 1 in that category. Now, I tried to go back home several years ago, and I thought that, when I left there in 52, I thought I'd go back home. Everything would be pretty much the same as when I left there. When I got back home, I had it all planned that I was going to go back and stay. But when I got there, it was a whole different situation. All the people that I had known when I left there no longer existed. They were no longer there. And everything that I had thought of what I was going to do was no longer there. The whole scene of on the reserve, the Dokis Reserve had changed so much that they now had paved roads through the village, and where they just had little paths. And the only way I could recognize the people that were there was through I saw their eyes, and I knew who the family was, where they came from. That was the only way that I recognized these people. I knew who their parents were. Other than that, I was completely in a whole different situation. I stayed there for a while, and I tried to adjust myself to that point, to try to be back to where I was before. It didn't work. It just did not work. It was like a spiritual experience where I was seeing things that weren't there, seeing almost like ghosts and spirits. I had to get out of there. I had to leave. I couldn't stand it. There was something about it. It just it was very, very strange. I could not stay there anymore. There's too many memories of people that I knew, all the people that have passed on, and in my mind, I couldn't believe it that this had happened. I'm still thinking back of when we were just kids and running these trails and doing all the different things, and going out on a boat fishing and playing around in the woods, running and playing and all that kind of stuff that I used to do there. And it was a desperate way to get out of there. I didn't want to be in that area anymore because it just haunted me. It must have been like a haunting situation where I couldn't take it. I just had to leave. And everyone asked me, my brother asked me, he says, "What's wrong? What's the matter? Why are you leaving? Why can't you stay? Why can't you stay here? Why can't you be here anymore?" I said, "I just can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. There's too many memories. My parents, all of my brothers and sisters, they all passed on. And here I'm trying to bring that back. And it's just not there." I wanted to get back to what I had before. I thought that I could get back to what I had before. I think our brain tells us maybe we still have something there. Maybe there's still something there for us. But time passes, and the time that passes, it changes the whole structure of what was there before. And it no longer exists. And that's what we're looking for. I think we're looking for that specific moment that when we left there, it was such a wonderful time and such a great thing. There's certain things that were fantastic, but there's also a lot of heartaches. And I think that the parts that you hope for and you wish for, you hope you'll find it. You think you're going to find it, but it's not there anymore. And I think that's what we look for. At least that's what I thought. That's what I thought was going to be like. And I had all this deal. When I get home, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set myself up, and this is what I'm going to be doing from now on. And that's where I want to spend the rest of my life. And that's where I want to go, because that's where I was brought up. That's where I was my younger days, and that's where I wanted to be. But it's not there. I think you want to go home, and that's where you want to be buried. I think that's basically what the thing was. I think you want to go home where the rest of your family is. And I think I went back home. Okay, I went back home. After I got home, we did all the stuff that I thought was going to be okay. I went to the cemetery to where all of my relatives, all of my parents, all of my siblings had passed away and where they were buried and everything. All of a sudden I realized that is not going to help me any. That's not going to help me any by being there. That's not going to help me. If I pass away, and wherever I pass away, that's where I'm going to end up, no matter where. I got a message from my brother, and he says, you come home. He's your oldest brother, my brother. We used to call him Sam. He says he was in an accident. He got into a fight with his cousins, and they beat him up really bad. And he says he's in the hospital right now. He says, would you come out and help him? Could you come out and see if... He says, nobody can be there. I left and I went back to Toronto. He was in the hospital in Toronto. And the doctor came up to me and he said, we can't do too much for him, but he said, we have to get into his skull, but we have to have somebody to sign to okay it. And he said, we need someone from the family. He says, are you a family? I said, yeah, that's my brother. And they said, would you sign this? And I signed the paper for them to go ahead to work on him. And the thing about that was I signed his life away. That's the way I felt. I signed his life away because they operated on him, but it didn't pull through. He died. And you know who I blamed? Myself. That was who I blamed. Sorry. I blame myself for that because I figured I signed it. I signed that note saying, go ahead and work on him. That's the saddest part of life. That's the sad part of life, is when you think you're trying to help someone and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. How many times through life do we have to go through that? There's times when my brother died, my sister came by me. I went to the wake, and I was sitting there crying. And she says, there's 9 of us. There was 9 of us in the family. Do you realize that there's 9 of us that you have to go through all of this? Each one of us is going to be gone. And we're going to have to face each one of them. She's long gone. She has passed away long ago. And I remember that, what she had said, what she told me about the grief that we have no control over. No one has control over it. We tried our best to ease that pain, but it's there. And there's no way that we can avoid it. And it continues on. I'm an old man now, and I can see what's happening. I can see that's what's happening. As I get older, I'm going to be 82 next month, or two months from now. Well, it's close enough. Anyway, but I'm going to be 82 years old. And as you get older, once my dad told me, he says, son, a lot of people say it's such a nice thing to get old, to be an old person and see all the things around you. But you know what? He said, one of the things, the grief that you will find is that all your friends that you have learned, of all the friends that you have gained through life are going to be leaving you as you get older. The longer you live, the more grief you come across, because of there's so many of them that you see. All the friends that you make, all the friends that you have made all through these years, if they're a little older than you are, they're gone. And so these are the things that you're going to have to put up with, which I found out that he was right. And he was true. He was right about that. When I left home, went out on my own, okay, I know I had to do it on my own. There was nobody there that I could fall back on and say, oh, I'm going to go home to mommy. I'm going to go home to daddy, and they're going to save me. It wasn't there. I had to go out and do it. And I had to learn, and I had to teach myself to behave and to do what I had to do to survive. And that's where all this comes in, where there's a certain point that you can be happy with what you're doing, but not to overindulge. When you go from one place to the other and you're making this huge change, your whole life has changed there. It's not something that you sit around at home and you're depending on your family to take care of your parents. You're sitting there. And so this is basically, I think, what I saw in when I left was, I knew my parents weren't there to take care of me anymore. But I noticed that a lot of the people, a lot of the boys that lived on the reserve would leave. They were gone for a couple of weeks and they'd be back. And they'd say, oh, I got lonesome. I had to come back. I had to come back. You didn't have to. That was the part that I decided when I left. I wasn't going to come back because I was lonesome or because I didn't know how to handle myself out there. So I had to make it a point. When I left, this is what I have to do. I have to get out and do it on my own. I have to make it. And I can't sit around and feel sorry for myself or feel lonesome for something. And I found when I did that, I found that I could find something that I did at home that I could do somewhere else. I found out that when I got to Cleveland, and I found that I should find something that simulates what I did at home. Okay, I used to ice skate at home. Okay, I loved to ice skate. We used to play hockey as soon as it got cold. We used to go out. Okay, I found out that there was a roller rink. There was an ice roller rink. And I thought, well, roller rink is the same as ice skating. And I thought, that's where I'm going to have to try. And that's where I ended up doing roller skating. I started roller skating. I took classes on roller skating, on dancing, doing dances and stuff. That's where I met my first wife. That's how I helped myself. This is how I did to get me out of the situation of wanting to go home. Oh, somebody's going to help me when I go home. You know, I can't be out here by myself, all by myself. Poor me. Humor is, it comes along with being humble. And I think you have to kind of not take things too serious as because when you start taking things serious, that's when you get into trouble. You know, you start to worry too much. And if you kind of let things go as they do, as much as you can, then I don't think it's quite as bad. I don't think you have that life is there's certain things in life that's going to happen, and more than likely they will happen for you and things around you. And so you're always prepared for that, no matter what that is. If it gets real bad, fine. If it's funny, you laugh. If we're not willing to learn, it gets very, very boring. There's nothing there. There's nothing there to learn. There's nothing there to live for. If you want to learn something, and you've succeeded, no matter what it is, no matter how small it is, if you sit there and learn something, you can look back at life and say, hey, I've done this. I've done this. I've learned how to do this. And I've seen objects. I've seen objects with things fall apart. Okay, I figure I could fix that. If someone put this together, in my mind, I feel if someone put this together and fixed it, I can do that too. And that's why I sit here every day. I have this instrument alongside of me. Every time I feel a new melody coming on, I'll pick it up and I'll try to play that melody. And if I can learn to play that melody, I've succeeded. I've done it. And so I'm up for the next one. And when they stop coming, when I stop having these motivations, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'll do. I'll have to find something else. I'll have to find something that's going to keep me entertained, keep me going. And that's what I have to do. I worked on that at that lodge, and every Saturday they would have entertainment. They would have either they'd bring my uncle in to play the fiddle, and they'd have a little dance or something like that. And they'd sit around and maybe sing a few songs. So I started singing my songs. I was listening to Nashville at the time. On Saturday nights, we'd listen to Nashville. You'd hear these songs coming in from Nashville. And I learned these songs. And everyone on the river liked the songs. So we all started singing. All of us teenagers, that was our entertainment, was learning to play the guitar and learning. One of the boys had a guitar. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted a guitar because they were learning to play the guitar and learning to sing. And so we started singing these country western songs. Hank Williams came on. Hank Williams started singing, and I heard his songs, and I thought, I don't know if I could do that. I wonder if I could sing like that, like him. And I tried to mimic him. I went out to town, and we bought this record of Hank Williams. And we just wore that record out. I mean, that thing was worn out, was so scratchy. It had the old record type deal, was just scratched and stuff like that. The thing was getting so bad that you could hardly hear what he was singing. But he sang the lovesick blues, cold, cold heart, your cheating heart. And I remember I memorized all these songs. And to this day, I sing these songs when I go to the to entertain the old people. I tell them, here's the songs that I wrote. This day, everybody says, did you really write these songs? But I was just kidding them, And everybody says, now I go to the bluegrass sessions, and everybody says, oh yeah, here's Richard. He wrote these songs. This is a song I wrote on the way out here this afternoon. This is my motto, is every time I say this, everybody kind of laughs, because at one point people were already starting to believe that I did it, but it's just the way I get their attention. Your cheating heart will make you weep. You'll cry and cry and try to sleep, but sleep won't come the whole night through. Your cheating heart will tell on you. When tears come down like falling rain, you tossed around and call my name. You walk the floor the way I do. Your cheating heart will tell on you. Your cheating heart will pine someday and crave the love you threw away. The time will come when you'll be blue. Your cheating heart will tell on you. When tears come down like falling rain, you tossed around and you called my name. You walk the floor the way I do. Your cheating heart will tell on you. Your cheating heart will tell on you. Yes, I sing these songs to the elders, and it kind of brings back memories to them, because these are the old Hank Williams songs back in the early 50s and around 48, 49, and 50s. Yeah, and here's another song that I wrote, and not really. This is one of George Strait's songs. I kind of like it, and it's called Drinking Champagne. Drinking champagne, feeling no pain till early morning. Dining and dancing with every pretty girl I could find. Having a fling with a pretty young thing till early morning. And knowing tomorrow I'll wake up with you on my mind. Guilty conscience, I guess, though I must confess, I never loved you much when you were mine. So I'll keep drinking champagne and feeling no pain till early morning. Dining and dancing with every pretty girl I could find. Having a fling with a pretty young thing till early morning. And knowing tomorrow I'll wake up with you on my mind. A guilty conscience, I guess, though I must confess, I never loved you much when you were mine. So I'll keep drinking champagne, feeling no pain till early morning. I'm dining and dancing with every pretty girl I could find. I'm having a fling with the pretty young thing till early morning. And knowing tomorrow I'll wake up with you on my mind. Knowing tomorrow I'll wake up with you on my mind. Yes, here's one that goes back quite a few years. And this is one I think that Eddie Arnold used to sing. And this is one of the older people, one of the, I think, classics of the older people. Love to hear this one. I wrote it on the way out here. Oh boy, this is quite brings back memories of the days when I first started to sing songs, and it was hard for me to just get up and sing these songs, because at the time I didn't realize at this moment that I'd be using them again, and it's goes something like this. Oh, I wish I had someone to love me, someone to call me their own. Oh, I wish I had someone to live with, 'cause I'm tired of living alone. Oh, please meet me tonight in the moonlight. Oh, please meet me tonight all alone. I have a sad story to tell you. It's a story that's never been told. Now I have a grand ship on the ocean, all mounted with silver and gold. And before my poor darling would suffer, oh, that ship would be anchored and sold. Oh, I wish I had someone to love me, someone to call me their own. Oh, I wish I had someone to live with, 'cause I'm tired of living alone. Yes, I'm tired of living alone. Yeah, these are songs that kind of bring back memories of the days when I first started doing entertaining and started singing these songs, and to see the people, to watch the expression on the people's faces when I sang the songs. And today, when I go to seniors' homes and do this, they react to it a lot. They react to these songs. And there was a song the other day I went and I sang it, and the people were just sat there and they said that was the kind of things that they like to hear. I'm sending you a big bouquet of roses, once for every time you broke my heart. And as the door of love between us closes, tears will fall like petals when you part. I begged you to be different, but you always been untrue. I'm tired of forgiving, now there's nothing left to do. So I'm sending you a big bouquet of roses, once for every time you broke my heart. Once for every time you broke my heart. Yeah, these are songs that brings back the old memories of things the songs that These are in my childhood. This was when I was a teenager. These were some of the songs that were sung at that damn time. I tried so hard, my dear, to show that you're my every dream. Yet you're afraid each thing I do is just some evil scheme. A memory from your lonesome past keeps us so far apart. Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold heart? Another love before my time made your heart sad and blue. And so my heart is paying now for things I didn't do. In anger, unkind words are said that makes the teardrops start. Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold heart? There was a time when I believed that you belonged to me. But now I know your heart is shackled to a memory. The more I learn to care for you, the more we drift apart. Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold heart? Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold heart? These are just part of the songs that were sung in the early days of my childhood. These are the songs that actually brought me to the States. I used to entertain people in the tourist lodges. And one of the people there kind of liked what I did, and so they asked if I would like to come to work for them in Cleveland, Ohio. And that's when I left my home and made the big journey into the United States, into the wild, wild, wild blue yonder, wondering where I would end up, where I would be. It has been quite a life for me, and it has been the most wonderful. If I had to do over again, I don't think there's too many different things that I would change. That I would. Here's a song that I wrote for this friend of mine. This is a little friend of mine that when I was down in Yuma, Arizona, and I wrote this song for him, and I actually did a CD of it, and I gave it to him, and I said, he actually cried over when he heard the song over this. His name was Dudley. He was the little guy who came into our camp, and we were singing, and he comes rolling in his little wheelchair, and Dudley, he was paralyzed. So I wrote the song about him, and here's how it goes. Ooh, oops. Ooh, Dudley, sing that prisoner song for me. Ooh, Dudley, sing that song again for me. Dudley is a friend of mine I met down in California. I was playing at a bluegrass jam. He came rolling in one late afternoon in his little wheelchair. You see, Dudley, he was paralyzed from his waist down to his feet. He asked if we mind, that he would like to join in. We opened up the space between me and George. After he had settled in, he reached down and opened up his case, pulled out his mandolin. Now he was ready to play. Ooh, Dudley, sing that song again for me. Ooh, Dudley, sing that prison song for me. He sang the song with feeling that it almost made me cry. He sang his songs right from the heart, like the one about Amelia Earhart, and the one about a prisoner man who said, who tucked his babies home every night. Ooh, Dudley, sing that song again for me. Ooh, Dudley, sing that song again for me. Yeah, that was the song that I wrote for him, and it came out really nice. And it brings back memories of when I was down with them down in Yuma, Arizona. That's just some of the people that I met along the way as I traveled in my venture. And I don't think these are people that I will never forget. And here's a song that I like to sing because it's kind of gives us all this things only last for a little while. And this was a song that was written by, I think it was Waylon Jennings. He did it for his wife. It goes something like this. Storms never last, do they, baby? Bad times all pass with the wind. Your hand in mine stills the thunder, and you make the sun want to shine. Oh, I followed you down so many roads, baby. Pick wildflowers, sing your soft, sad songs. But every road we took, God knows, our search was for the truth. And the storm that's brewing now won't be the last. Storms never last, do they, baby? Bad times all pass with the wind. Your hand in mine stills the thunder, and you make the sun want to shine. Yes, you make the sun want to shine. Oh boy, I don't know. I get very emotional sometimes, and I guess maybe it's good. You know, my dad was that way. He was very emotional. As he got older, he got very emotional. But every little thing that we did, he always his favorite songs. He always asked if we'd sing him songs, and as we sang, we'd start crying. I guess that's where I get it from. Yeah, it's okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you. This is my friend. His name is Gwegwe. How you doing today, Gwegwe? I'm doing okay. And how are you? Oh yeah, there he is. Hi Jens. Hi Jens, how you been, Jens? It's good to see you, Jens. Yeah. Well, what do you think of Jens there? Oh, I think he's a very good guy. He's a very good guy, not Jens. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like to work with Jens. Yeah. He takes good pictures of me. Look at that. Look at my hair. Look at my hair. Look at that. Look. Hey, I do really good, don't I? Yeah. Well, that's all for now. Bye.